Thank you. Before starting, I'd just like to thank Mrs. Lee for coming. We briefly talked beforehand. I used to work in Korea. I've heard of many tragedies like Mrs. Lee, and I think it just comes to show that this is a universal issue, and we all have the same pain. So thank you, Mrs. Lee, for coming in and talking to us. Good afternoon, Security Council members. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to brief you on this important topic. Thank you to the United States, the United Kingdom, France for calling for this meeting and inviting me to brief, as my son is one of the 4 U.S. hostages still in Gaza. I am the father of Itay Chen. Itay is an American, German, Israeli citizen held in Gaza by Hamas for 587 days. If you look at the kid, he's a fun-loving kid. Didn't have much to care about. Loved basketball. Would have been watching a basketball game, the NBA, yesterday. Boy Scout counselor, has a loving girlfriend, 2 siblings. I'm here with my wife, Itay Chen, a German-Israeli citizen, and my youngest son, alone. Itay, at the age of 18, joined the IDF, and on that fatal October 7th, 2023, was stationed on the Israeli-Gaza border. He and his squad fought against Hamas for several hours, protecting Israeli civilians from being raped, burned alive, killed. Eventually, Itay's tank was neutralized by Hamas, and 3 of the 4 tank members were taken hostage to Gaza. Since then, my family, as well as 250 other families whose loved ones were taken hostage by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad from over 25 different nationalities and 5 different religions, have been fighting to receive knowledge of their loved ones and their fate and their release. In March 24, my family was notified by the IDF that Itay most likely did not survive the October 7th attack. But for over 19 months, Hamas have not been willing to acknowledge, A, that he is in their possession, and B, what is his physical status. I think this is the lowest form of terrorist psychological warfare imaginable. I humbly ask the Security Council members, what kind of human beings take deceased people and use them as negotiation chips? Who denies the deceased the last basic human dignity that they deserve? When my family has been subjected to this deliberate withholding of information about our son's faith, the refusal to return him back to us, the silence, that long silence, has been a form of slow, enduring psychological torture. Please look at my son, 14 years old. Where should he be now? Should be at school. But instead he's here with me, fighting for getting his elder sibling back. That's not normal. The UN Special Rapporteur of Torture, Dr. Alice Edwards, has recognized that families of hostages may themselves be victims of torture. She states that the prolonged uncertainty, the denial of truth, the concealment of faith, all of these can constitute inhuman and degrading treatment. That, my dear council members, is our daily reality with no relief in sight. Today, more than 30 families in Israel share the same fate as us. I would like to recognize Leah Goldin, sitting behind me, mother of Hadar Goldin. She has been advocating for 10 and a half years to receive her son's release from Hamas and was instrumental in the adoption of Resolution 2474. Thank you, Leah, for being with us today. Resolution 2474 was adopted unanimously by all 15 members of the UN Security Council in June 2019, led by Kuwait, that will be speaking here. The resolution marked a historical step in global humanitarian law by officially recognizing the rights of families to know the fate of the missing loved ones in areas of conflict. Resolution 2474 obligates parties, state and non-state actors such as Hamas, in armed conflict to search for and account for the missing. Hamas, by refusing to provide information or access to hostages, even to peacemaking entities such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, are in clear violation of this resolution and of international law. The resolution supports mechanisms to hold parties legally accountable for abduction and kidnapping, including when such actions rise to the level of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The systematic concealment of hostages by Hamas meets this threshold. Resolution 2474 gives the UN and members a legal, but even more so, a moral framework to condemn Hamas for its actions and to sanction its backers, such as Iran. The Security Council should demand, first and foremost, the release of the deceased hostages in their possession. Furthermore, this violation frames the issue of deceased hostages held by Hamas not just as a political or military issue, but as a violation of international law under a UN Security Council resolution. We are asking, begging, expecting the UN to uphold the very resolution it passed, to implement it with real consequences. There must be accountability for those who withhold the deceased and those that deprive families of the right to closure. Resolution 2474 must not remain symbolic. It must become enforceable. I would also like to bring attention to the religious dimension behind Resolution 2474. The resolution basis is something simple. All of you sitting here today, we are all children of God. We walk this planet together. And as such, there are basic principles all people should adhere to as people of faith. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Pope Leo XIV, that in his first Sunday speech called for the release of all the hostages in Gaza and the ceasefire. It is discouraging for the deceased hostage families that this resolution has not been implemented due to politics, and has created an equation that taking hostages, even deceased hostages, is an asset, not a liability. There is a structural gap in the international system that must be resolved. Despite the adoption of Resolution 2474, there is currently no specific mandate within the United Nations dedicated to addressing hostage-taking as a distinct violation of international law. This omission leaves families like ours without a vocal point, without guidance, and without adequate representation. That is why we are calling on this Council and the Secretary General to establish a dedicated UN mandate holder, a special representative or special envoy for hostage affairs, similar to the US that has a special president envoy for hostage affairs that is called SPIHA. Tasked with monitoring the implementation and resolution of 2474 and addressing the broader range of violations and harms associated with hostage-taking. Such a mandate holder would provide institutional leadership, coordinate international responses, and assurance that the commitments this Council has made are translated into real actions, relief and justice for the victims and their families. To summarize, my wife and I come here today as parents, like any other parent on this planet. Similar to Orna and Ronen Neutra, here in the audience today, whose son Omer, like Itay, a U.S. citizen, is being held by Hamas. Like Iris Weinstein, daughter of Judy and Gadi Weinstein, U.S. citizens, also held by Hamas. Due to a lack of a better term, we, the U.S. hostage families and the 54 other families with hostages in Gaza, are collateral damage. Yeah, collateral damage is the best thing I got in a conflict that has been going on for decades. We want Itay back, and his physical status, whatever it might be, does not make him any less of a hostage. I ask the Council to reflect on the leadership of President Trump that has demanded, again and again, the release of all hostages in Gaza, the living and the deceased. Since his inauguration, 46 U.S. citizens have been released from captivity worldwide. But his work, like this Security Council, is not done. We ask the Council, in the name of the deceased, whom do not have a voice, to immediately enforce Resolution 2474 with sanctions for those who disobey them. Furthermore, and lastly, in light of the negotiations going on in Doha about a potential ceasefire in Gaza, we also cannot allow a reality where there will be a new UN resolution declaring an end of violence in Gaza without the release of the last hostage. That is hostage number 58. 58 hostages are still in Gaza, deceased or living. Thank you for your time and attention, and I request your support to enable families of this tragic fate, wherever you might be living, such as mine, to have closure and then have at least the ability to move on to their next sad chapter in life. As we say, and have been saying for 587 days, bring them home now. Thank you for your attention.